All right. Well, welcome to Exorcist Reviews. If you are new to this channel and enjoy its content, please like, share, and subscribe. We all know who I am, but I would like to welcome our guest, Michael Peter Blatty, eldest son to the late author of The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty. Now, that's correct, right? I don't want to state that it's not.
Yes. My dad had 4 sons, but I'm the oldest. So, yeah, that would be me.
Awesome sauce.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Oh, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Should be fun.
Visiting was great.
Right. I was going to mention we did meet about a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the bookstore that we met at was pretty awesome. I've never been there, obviously.
Yeah. Right.
The rare books were amazing. So we both viewed Exorcist Believer, the first film in the new Legacy trilogy.
Yeah.
You had watched it on Thursday. I just watched it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How many people would you say were in the theater there?
Well,
Thursday.
I can tell you exactly how many. Of course, I saw it the first opportunity that I could, which was Thursday, a screening at 5 o'clock. So it was not the most convenient hour for someone to see a film. But in addition to me, there were 2 other people in the theater. This was a local theater that holds, I'd say, 200 or so seats.
Right.
Now, presumably, there were more people at the later screenings, but just by way of comparison, my son, who's 18, attended a screening at the same theater last night, which would be Saturday night at about 7:30. So I was curious to ask him what the attendance was like there. I presumed it would be pretty good because, again, it was in a 200, maybe 300 seat theater. He said there were 4 other people besides him, and it was besides him and his friend. So, I'm seeing box office figures for the film that say it made, over the weekend, including today, I presume, or as far as the screenings have gone today, that it's made 27 million domestically. They were expecting 35 million, but they're saying it made 27 million. I have to doubt that figure. I don't know why you would fudge a figure like that, but I have to doubt that just based on our own experience. I mean, we live in a suburb, we basically attended a screening in Portland, Oregon. So we're not in some remote village.
Oh, no.
So, I don't know. But I was expecting a pretty good crowd, actually, at least at my son's, the screening my son attended on a Saturday night opening weekend. So to me, if there were 4 people in there at 7:30, that indicates to me it's a really bad return, but I don't know.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy because I went, like I said yesterday, it was in the afternoon. We had maybe a dozen people.
Yeah, and that's Saturday afternoon.
Have 4. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the problem with if you fake your numbers, I could see a producer being embarrassed to reveal what their real numbers were, especially after really poor reviews. So I could see them exaggerating their numbers so it doesn't look so bad. On the other hand, if you lie about it, then you probably owe people more money, who get a percentage, so I don't know. So maybe the figures are accurate. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. The going to the theater and getting a head count, it just doesn't seem to be matching the box office returns.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Huh. Okay.
Anyway, so
so we're looking at a film that I guess everyone's already heard the synopsis for like the past 2 years, where it deals with a father whose daughter's possessed. He's looking for answers, and he finds Chris McNeil, and basically that's what we're looking at in a nutshell. Right. There's been a lot of things I've heard about this, the movie being from other people, it being too long, boring, but I've also heard in a positive that it begins very well. So, you know, we're starting off in Haiti 13 years ago with Victor Fielding and his pregnant wife. They're visiting Haiti, or they're on they might be on holiday. And then this is the time when they had that big earthquake back in 2010. So she suffers for it, as you know.
Right.
And Victor is put in a position where he has to make a choice.
Right.
Because the doctors are saying, well, it's either going to be your wife or your child that survives. And so that's where we cut to black and then come to present day. What did you think about that section? It seemed pretty well made in the beginning. Definitely, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I tried to, from everything I had read and heard about the script and seeing the trailers and just everything I had heard about the film, I was expecting it in advance, to be honest, to be not good. In fact, just bad. So when I went to go to the theater, I determined that even though I was expecting it to be bad, I would try to keep an open mind, you know, because I would like this to be a good film. And I sort of had a test run when I saw the Pope's Exorcist, because I had heard bad things about it, but I like who's the actor, the lead?
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe. I like him as an actor, and I thought, well, I want to see it. I'm curious anyway, and so I tried to approach it with an open mind, and I actually liked it quite a bit. At least the first half hour, 40 minutes, I thought, wow, this is not a bad film. And then it went downhill precipitously, almost, you know, from about the 40-minute mark. And then the ending was just terrible. So I tried to take the same approach with this film, and I was surprised I thought that the first half hour or so, all those scenes in Haiti, which actually filmed in the Dominican, I guess, but it doesn't matter. And the earthquake, you know, the whole thing I thought was very good. And the whole dilemma he has about, does he save his wife or baby? It seemed like a great setup, you know, for the rest of the film. So yeah, I was impressed, and I thought, wow, this may be a really good movie after all. I don't know the actors. I don't see that many films anymore, but Leslie Odom Jr., am I pronouncing his name correctly?
Yes.
I'd heard of him, of course, having been in Hamilton and so on, but I had never really seen him. And I was really impressed with just his presence and his acting. So to me, it got off to a really good start. And then, you know, as it went on, to me, it got progressively less interesting, less engaging, and then became just bad, you know. Not bad on the level of the Heretic. You know, I was thinking maybe it was going to be as bad as, or maybe worse than the Heretic. But the advantage you had with the Heretic is it was so spectacularly bad. And the expectations were so high that it was actually, in a perverse way, fun to watch, and very funny, a very funny film, because it's just so bad. This one, you know, for better or worse, didn't sink to that level. So yeah, was just my overall impression of it. To me, the word I came up with when I thought of it afterwards, that to me expressed how I felt about the film overall, was just dumb. And curiously, because later I saw a review, I think you saw too, of Mark Kermode, an audio review.
Yep.
And it's funny because I believe he came up with the same word, but I actually had concluded that before I saw that his video. Just, you know, I'm not a film critic. There were just all kinds of, we can discuss it. To me, there were all kinds of things that made it dumb and not engaging and not interesting. My overall criticism is I felt there was no heart to the film. I felt that the people who made the film were not passionate about the story of The Exorcist or about the original film.
Did it
At least
feel
I didn't
rushed
see
to you?
the
Midway a
story
little bit?
itself. Well, at some point, it made this crazy turn to being like a serious film about the meaning of life and how we need to work together as a community to solve the world's problem. You know, it was like the weird mishmash of different Exorcist prequels and sequels, little bits and pieces from the TV series, from the original film. As you know, and we can talk about it,
Right.
there were a number of scenes that were obviously meant as an homage to the original
Yeah.
film. But I mean, what was the point? Was it to subconsciously remind you of the original film, or was it for audience members to nudge each other and go, oh, you know, that's the scene that they're replicating from the original film? To me, it was dumb, just starting with the dogs fighting at the beginning of the film.
Right.
I mean, it's like, we know it's supposed to be a sequel to The Exorcist. We don't need images reminding us. We know, you know, we don't need to hear tubular bells.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Definitely.
I think the use of the tubular bells was the most effective thing that the film did, because it reminded you of how much you liked the original film.
Or reminded you that you were in an Exorcist film.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll let you, you know, if you want to give your opinion or ask more questions, I could be more specific. But yeah, and there was something, I don't know what they were doing. One of the problems is this: my dad's motives for making the film were, he had personally dealt with a crisis of faith.
Yeah.
You know, born and raised in, you know, a Catholic, and the death of his mother, which is portrayed in The Exorcist in the original film,
Right. Yep.
sent him into like an emotional tailspin and a crisis of faith for various reasons, which resulted in him writing The Exorcist. And so that was kind of, in a way, his life's work. I mean, all of his emotions, his feelings, his attachment to his mother were reflected in that book and in that film. So he had a passion about it.
Definitely.
Now, these filmmakers, I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, it wasn't their passion to make an Exorcist film. If it was, then they failed miserably. But obviously, they were hired to make a bunch of bucks for the studio.
Right.
But you can see it. You can. I mean, I don't know what their history is. Maybe they liked the film. Maybe they liked it a lot. But you don't see it in the way they approach the film, and the way the script was written and the whole production. It just looks like a cheap knockoff to me of an Exorcist film.
I kind of felt like it was a little choppy.
Yeah, but well, explain to me what you mean by that. I think I know what you mean.
It's almost like something was missing. It didn't. To me, it didn't flow as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the tension wasn't there. It didn't flow as well. I think the medical part was rushed. They rushed through that really quick.
Yeah.
I didn't even get a sense of time. You know, it's like with Chris McNeil when she went to Behringer Clinic. It was like 2 weeks. But you kind of got that feeling that, you know, she spent a lot of time there. This, it felt like they brought everybody in and they heard their opinion one day.
Right.
It just didn't feel like, you know, like anybody had to schedule anything and say, okay, we can't get this done until this and whatnot. There was no real sense of that. It's like, come on, we got to get this done so we can get straight to that exorcism.
Right. And not only that, but I mean, it was such a blatant ripoff of the original scenes, of the medical scenes, right down to the phraseology that the doctors use. And remember the line about, this is going to feel a little wet and cold on your neck, and then the needle going in, and everything was like, I know it was deliberate, but of course, part of the problem is they can't go through the audience is not wondering whether or not she's really possessed, you know. They know these girls are possessed. And so it was almost like just obligatory like scene. But yeah, and I thought the whole thing was kind of muddled. Like, it felt as though it were trying to have some sort of coherent message. Like, one thing I didn't understand, maybe you do, is this whole, Well, first of all, I don't even understand the title, Exorcist Believer. Do you? I don't know what
Now
they
I'm
mean
kind
by
of
that.
getting maybe it was referred to when with Leslie Odom Jr.'s character. You know,
Suddenly realizes that
he
she's
kind of was
possessed.
going that direction, and then after his wife died, he became an atheist, not believing
Right.
in God and all this, and then became real protective of his daughter. I kind of got
Yeah.
that impression.
Yeah. So, well, that makes sense. And I just thought the whole message was muddled. What about this issue of choosing? That seemed to be important in the film. Obviously, at the beginning, he has to choose between his daughter and his
Right,
wife.
and it's almost all you could almost say it was like foreshadowing.
Yeah, and then at
He's going
the
to have to
end, of
make a choice
course,
later.
right,
Yeah.
and then I didn't even, yeah, I didn't. Maybe I was falling asleep. I don't know. I didn't even understand why um, they had to choose between which of the girls would survive. Why did there have to be a choice? Did I miss
Yeah.
something there?
No, I don't think so. Personally, you know, looking at some of these trailers and behind the scenes,
Uh-huh.
there's scenes where they show the Catherine person. I guess she's getting her baptism. So
Okay.
maybe that might have been an alternate ending where maybe both girls survive.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm guessing, because
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of these trailers and whatnot, they seem like they were outtakes because they didn't, you know,
Right.
some of them were close, but they didn't quite match.
Right.
And then you're
Right. Right.
expecting to hear these lines from the trailer in the movie, and I didn't hear a few of them. I don't recall hearing the "I don't want to go to hell." I don't remember
Right.
hearing that. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know where I was when that came out. I was watching it, but I don't even understand why there had to be a choice, like you said.
right.
Uh, if I
I
was a
understand the
demon,
beginning,
why
of
would I do
course.
that?
Yeah, and that's what I mean by muddled. I mean, is it just so that it would sort of parallel the choice that he had to make at the beginning? And then there was this whole issue of the daughter, his daughter saying, I know what choice you made. You chose our mother instead of me. And it was kind of a touching moment, but I mean, what's the point of her realizing it? I mean, I don't know what it adds to the story, or, you know, or to the action. And then the whole, again, The Exorcist is fundamentally a film about faith and lack of faith. This film decided it wanted to be about religion somehow, but it was in a weird way because, of course, it's set in Georgia, right? It's set in the South, I think,
Yep.
and then these religious people are sort of, I don't know what religion they are, and they're not Catholic, right? They're so sort of fundamentalist.
Yeah, they were supposed to be. I think they were supposed to be in a Catholic. That's the one that got
Are they?
killed. And
What's
then
that?
I think there was
Oh
one
yeah,
that was
the
supposed to be
priest. But I mean,
Catholic.
when they're in the church, in the church, is that a Catholic church? Is that supposed to be a Catholic
Oh, the one
ceremony?
in the church. You know,
Yeah,
I
when she
hear it was
walks down the
Baptist,
aisle.
but
Oh, there we
my
go. Okay. So, but some of
maybe.
the people were portrayed, I thought, very negatively, like religious fanatics of some kind. I
Yeah.
just thought the overall portrait of religious people was very negative.
Right.
Was sort of looking down on, well, looking down on Southern religious types. You know, there was like a type that was
Kind of putting
portrayed.
them in like a stereotype in a
Yeah,
sense.
and so that was part of the reason why I felt that there was no heart to this thing, because I didn't feel like the filmmakers had any sympathy at all for these religious people. Was kind of disdainful of them. And then they throw in this Catholic priest, Spanish. I don't know why he's Spanish, or isn't he? I don't know. I don't know where he's supposed to be from.
I don't know.
But
I'm not sure on that.
I don't know whether it was that they thought that they would attract more of an Hispanic audience by having an Hispanic priest. I don't know. But suddenly they throw in this Catholic priest who, if I remember the movie, doesn't want to get involved because he hasn't gotten official permission from the Pope or
Correct.
something. So he goes and he's waiting in his car until he's like dragged out and thrown in. It was just ridiculous. At that point, the movie had already spun out of control and just become this muddled mess of you know, and the other criticism I read, which I agree with, you know, as you know, it had about 4 or 5 jump scares. At least I counted that many.
I wasn't affected by them for
Well, the
some
thing
reason.
is, they made
very
me jump.
mild.
They did make me jump absolutely out of my seat. But to me, that's the cheapest thing you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe people, see, I'm not a regular horror movie goer. Maybe
Right.
people who go to horror movies love it. Maybe the more the better. To me, yes, I jumped, but I wasn't scared. I was just startled. And to me, it's just cheap. And it cheapens the whole effect of the movie, to my mind. So, you know, they threw those in. But then when you look at the whole rest of the film, I was never scared. The way you are in some of the scenes in The Exorcist, when the door opens and you see Reagan lying on the bed, you know, in the 4 posts tied down, and it's ominous and it's scary and you get goosebumps. For me, there was not a single scene that actually scared me. So, you know, that's why for me, the film is just badly made. And then they tack on at the end this hopeful message about if we can just work together as a family in peace, and we can solve all our problems. And it has this, you know, after one of the girls has died, you know, and the mother died and the priest dies, and people drag through all this horror, and then we're supposed to accept that this is now a happy ending, you know, because, you know, it's this kumbaya moment. And then we can get into it if you want to ask. I'm probably talking too much. If you want to ask about the final scene, I guess we're allowed to discuss the final scene. But you tell me a little more of what you think.
That final scene felt like it was just kind of I'm not sure. It just felt like it came out of a different movie altogether.
Well, can we say what it is, or is it still like too soon? Or
I think it's a little too soon. There's still people asking, so
all right.
Save that for the people that go, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
well, let me just say this. Let me just say, to me, the final scene was hokey and did not move me in any way. I think it's supposed to move the audience in some way. To me, it didn't in the slightest. I thought it was ridiculous.
I almost get the feeling that's the only reason she came down there. She was no advisor at the time, and people were listening. Probably figured out who we're talking about. And
yeah,
almost,
I don't know.
To me, it was almost like, since you're here, can you do this shot for us?
Well, I doubt that it was just spontaneous. I think what was ludicrous. I mean, I think if anybody's going to listen to this conversation, they probably will have seen the film first. But we'll still skirt around the edges. But when I first heard that she was on the set to advise the young actors as to how one would play a possessed child, I mean, that was ludicrous.
I thought that was, I was like, what?
That's what the director is for, right? Or go watch the movie and it'll give you some idea. You don't have to have the 12-year-old girl who's now 65 come and explain to you how you play a possessed child. I mean, it's ridiculous. Well, anyway,
I'm going to take you back to like, say, the set of the original Exorcist. Now, I know you've been to the Georgetown shots. When you did you ever observe how Friedkin was actually directing?
I didn't see a lot of the close-up of him talking to the actors and saying, now I want you to do this and I want you to do that. I think it had been rehearsed. I think the day before he rehearsed the scenes, the day before for the actors, the key scenes.
Right.
And so on set, he was just, they were there and they were doing it. And
now, one of the reasons I was asking was because it seemed like in some of these little behind the scenes that they kept putting out these featurettes, David Gordon Green kind of allowed, especially the young actresses, to kind of improvise how they would be possessed and whatnot. And the idea of, I think there was that one scene where the Angela character was underneath the bed at the hospital and then leaps up, and I guess that was supposed to be her idea that she came up with. But
Interesting. That
the
was one of the
problem I
jump
have,
scares.
yeah, one of the problems I had with it is, okay, with all these beds with straps, you don't see anybody in straps. Why didn't they strap her down? She's running around free.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
even in the house, when Chris comes to visit, there's straps on the bed.
Right.
Why is she free tearing pages out of a book? What kept them from strapping her down? She's obviously very violent.
Yeah, yeah.
The house was a wreck. And you would think that she would, even the Angela character would be doing something harmful to herself, that they'd want to strap her down and keep her from doing that.
Yeah, good point. It hadn't occurred to me.
I didn't understand that part.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that they would let a young actor like that sort of improvise. My recollection, 50 years later, is that, and I didn't witness this, but I believe that Friedkin in the hotel room or whatever would go over the scenes with the actors, and he was, my recollection, pretty much a control freak. I don't think he gave them much leeway. I think that Ellen Burstyn talked about in a couple of scenes, she changed a few lines, added and changed a couple of things, but generally speaking, I know Jason Miller in particular was bridling over the fact that that Friedkin was so controlling, and of course, as you probably read, objected to the shooting of guns to get a performance out of actors. He was very offended by that, and he thought it was all sort of like very unprofessional.
But then again, that was his first film. He's used to doing stage. It's not like it's going to happen on the stage.
I just recall my recollection of William Friedkin at the time was that, not speaking ill of the dead, because he was a great director, I think, but he was very much saw himself as a wunderkind and as like this. He was kind of a control freak on the set, and there was all the rage about him. He was young. He had just won Best Picture. He had this big movie he was going to do, The Exorcist, and he was very full of himself. And very,
I've heard that too.
The auteur, I remember him even discussing at that time in conversations how the director was basically the whole film. It was all the director. He saw himself in the kind of the mold of a Stanley Kubrick. And I think that was probably true of Stanley Kubrick. It was like the whole film was him, and I think he was probably seeing himself in that mold a little bit at the time, But anyway, what I was going to say is that it turned out to be the perfect combination, because my dad was sort of the, he was sort of the heart and soul of the movie, because he was so invested in it emotionally. And Friedkin was able to give what they call that documentary feel to it. And, my dad wanted the message out about faith and so on. And my dad can get carried away with that. And there can be too much, in my mind, too much conversation on screen. And Friedkin was like, no, we don't want these conversations. We're just going to show them, and we're going to shock them, and we're going to entertain them. So, that dynamic between them, the constant interplay, turned out to be a really good thing for that movie. Even though they were constantly battling one another.
It almost felt like the beginning of Believer was going to possibly go that documentary feel, and then it just kind of fell apart in the sense, okay, we're going to flash all these images, and things are just going to kind of get hokey. And I think the worst of it was when we see the smoke coming out of the girls' mouths.
Oh yeah.
And then I was kind of getting that impression of, I don't know if you had seen it. What was it called? The Haunting of Connecticut or something like that. It was ectoplasm coming out. I kind of got that impression. But then, like, when you see all this CGI start putting itself into play, and then you think about, okay, Friedkin wanted to kind of make something a little bit more realistic and like have a realistic base. And you're seeing this happen. It's like, it almost feels like it's shattered canon. I can't even prove that the place that they filmed or the location that they filmed, give it any kind of real name to where it was in Georgia was an actual place. And you with your father's book, you had a real street, a real house, a real plumbing set of steps. Without that, for me, it's hard to connect it as a sequel?
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about this, and I've sort of told this story before. After The Exorcist was made, and the book obviously did really well for a year on the New York Times bestseller list, and then the movie, everybody knew it was going to be a big deal in the way that everyone knew The Godfather was going to be a big deal, because the book had been so big, and there was a lot of hoopla about the filming and who was going to be in it. So The Exorcist kind of fell into that same category of like a blockbuster was being made. But after the success of The Exorcist, of the film, I remember I was still a student at Georgetown. It was like my senior year. My dad came. It was my 21st birthday. We actually celebrated on the steps of the M Street on the, well, now the Exorcist steps. Back then they were the Hitchcock steps, as you know.
Right.
But so my dad came to the campus, and we were talking about the success of the film and so on. And he told me that Warner Brothers was after him to do a sequel.
Right.
And I said, well, you're going to do it, right? You know, because I figure, you know, if they were going to pay him a ton of money, he had already made a lot of money. They were going to pay him. So you're going to do it, right? And he was kind of astonished. He stopped in his tracks, literally, and said, son, I've already written The Exorcist. Why would I want to write it again? You know, and his point being, I told the whole story I wanted to tell. I said everything I wanted to say.
It's
so
done.
Why would I want to add on to it or redo it or whatnot? And instead, you know, he could have made a ton of money. Instead, he wrote a book about his mother, a very quiet little book that he probably made very little money on. But I always admired him for that, because when he had the opportunity to make, you know, he was in a position to say no. But I mean, he could have made a ton more money by just doing his own sequel. And he turned it down. Of course, 10 years later, for various reasons, he did write his own sequel. But, you know, that's a whole different story. So part of the problem these filmmakers have is the story is complete, you know. You know, I saw the film, the original film, when they showed it on October, 1st on a big screen, because my 18-year-old son had never seen it. And so I wanted to take him to see it on a big screen for the first time. And I hadn't watched the movie in maybe about 10 years. I have to say, I was more impressed than I'd ever been by the film. I always thought it was a really good film, but I was struck by how good it was on so many levels. You know, I'm not saying this because it's my dad and he wrote screenplay and whatnot. I just think on every level, you know, the direction, the acting, you know, the cinematography, the music, the pacing, like everything comes together. And I kind of went off on a tangent because you were talking about CGI effects and so on. One thing that struck me is that it's amazing to look at that film and think it's 50 years old, and the effects are so good. And they were just with guys behind the bed pulling pumps and strapping her in. And like the scene when you first see her violently, Reagan going, you know, flopping up and down on the bed. It's unbelievable. But I've kind of gone off the track, but what I was going to say is,
no, it's fine.
Well, what I was going to say is, so the story has been told, and if people want to do sequels and prequels, one thing I would say is my dad never had any objection to it. I mean, he never felt that any of these things were going to hurt the quality or the fame of his original film. You know, his only concern when the Heretic came out is he wanted to make sure people understood that he wasn't involved with that, because it was such a bomb. But otherwise, he didn't care. He sold the rights to the people who made this film. You know, he really had. You know, he was somewhat involved in with the people who tried to do the prequel, you know, Dominion and so on. He tried to help out. I don't even think he was paid, but he, you know, he liked their project. But when the TV series came out, I asked him about it. What'd you think? He said, oh, well, you know, I watched the first segment and I kind of fell asleep in it. He said, I thought some of the acting was good. I think they kind of respected, but you see, he had no particular interest and he wasn't worried. Was it good? Was it bad? You know? So that's the way I think he would have felt about this project. Like, but well, I sold them the rights. If they can make a good film, great. But I mean, I don't really care. I don't even think he would have gone to see it. And I think that's true of William Friedkin. I don't think he would have gone to see this film.
Oh no, he made that pretty clear.
So they kind of felt the same way. They felt like, why should I bother? Now, as far as not the makers of the film, but like the director and the screenwriters and so on, they have a perfect right to just be hired onto a project to make a buck. Right. Now, maybe their heart was in it more than that, but there's certainly nothing wrong with saying, yeah, I'll be your director. I'll be your screenwriter. Just pay me and I'll do it. And I'll do the best I can. So there's no problem with that being a commercial. But the difference between the two is my dad's reasons for making it were so more personal, right, and more serious. Yep. And it comes across. And these movies, these sequels and prequels, they're all like, you can see it's just made for the money. It's made to cash in. So when they made this movie, they must have had in mind, I understand that they were expecting a fairly young audience, largely girls, I hear. Why that is, maybe a largely Hispanic audience. They must do the demographics and kind of put together a picture of who they think is the average film goer. Apparently is not a 70-year-old like me, or even a 40-year-old. Is probably about an 18, 19-year-old, but maybe obviously a large number of fans of the original movie. So maybe an older group too. But yeah. And so I think they just put together a movie thinking this is what is going to appeal to these people. And they're going to want jump scares. They're going to want special effects. They're going to want a certain amount of gore. They're going to want, definitely they're going to need an exorcism. Right. And that's it. But it just shows. But, one's expectations can't be too high for these sorts of things. When they say they're going to do a trilogy, I mean, come on, already you're talking about, there's no heart in it. It's just going to make a buck. And I think we paid $400 million, Universal did. So they're figuring we're going to make at least $200 million per film. And it's just dollars and cents, Right. The original James Robinson, I believe is his name, who ran Morgan Creek, who produced the Heretic, actually. I mean, not the Heretic, my dad's film, Legion, Exorcist III, Legion. Right. Mm-hmm. I met him one time, not to put down the business, but he was a former shoe salesman. And there's nothing disreputable about being a shoe salesman, but I'm not sure that a shoe salesman ought to be making motion pictures. I don't know. I'm not sure it translates, at least in his case. So I remember meeting him when my dad was negotiating with him, because my dad was paid to not only write screenplay, but also to direct. Mm-hmm. At that time, Morgan Creek bought the rights to but I remember sitting in on a conversation with this guy, and the word he kept using, which I had never heard before in the context of a motion picture, was franchise. He kept talking about, well, the franchise and what we're going to do with the Exorcist franchise. And that rubbed me the wrong way. My dad didn't object. It rubbed me the wrong way. To me, I felt like, this guy's just talking about any kind of product. I'm going to market this product. Sure. It just rubbed me the wrong way. Again, there's nothing wrong. If you want to make your money making movies, that's fine. There's nothing immoral about that. But knowing my dad's motives, it rubbed me the wrong way. And so, Morgan Creek, I don't know if I told you this, but Morgan Creek, I think my dad sold the rights for all prequels and sequels to Morgan Creek and James Robinson for, I think it was $3 million. Right. In 1982 or 3. It was a lot of money then. And then he sold the rights to Universal for $400 million. Okay, so that's 100% markup. Right. So I guess I wish my dad were around, but I'm glad he's not around to see that markup. And when he got like about 1/100th of what these people paid. But so, I mean, I would have liked it to have been a good movie. But I'm not invested in any way. I'm not the gap. If I had a profit of it, I suppose I'd be like, right.
Say if your dad was still alive and you know how you both went to see Exorcist 2, do you think he would have bothered to see this film or no?
No. I think the reason he went, we went we went for a couple of reasons. One is that they had asked his opinion, you know, after he said no, he didn't want to do it. They did ask his opinion about the script, and they did want to get his input. I don't know that they paid him anything for his input, but he had a good relationship with Frank Wells, who I think was running Warner Brothers at the time. They were sort of buddies. And so he tried to give them advice when he saw the screenplay and thought it was terrible. And then, you know, he sent the screenplay to me. I don't know if I told you the story. I think I did when we met.
I think you told me that he had read it. You know, I'm probably going to be asking that another time about how that was the original screenplay, correct?
Well, I think it was. It was because by Goodman or Goodhart, whoever I want to say it was Richard Goodhart. Was that the original screenplay?
Well, see, it was like I kept hearing that it got rewritten like about 5 times. You know, it's like when the movie started out, it had Lee J. Cobb starring, but then he had he had passed away before filming.
Right. Well, I think that all I know is there was only one name on the script that I read. I can remember that, and I think it was Richard Goodhart. So I think this was the original script. And my dad just, you know, I won't go on and on, but my dad was like startled by how bad he thought it was. And he sent it to me and said, "Son, I think this is really bad. What do you think?" And I thought it was really bad. So one of the reasons he wanted to go is he was really curious to see what changes they had made, because he couldn't believe they would film the script as it was. And I guess they did change it, but essentially it was the script I remember when I saw the film with him. So that's why he wanted to go. Of course, I don't know, but I don't, you know, for one thing, you know, he was in his 80s, you know, he'd passed away at 89. If he were still alive now and, you know, at 94, I don't think he would have gone to a movie, but he had I don't think he would have gone even out of curiosity. He would have just looked at reviews and said, yeah, well, yeah, you know, what do you expect?
I kind of got the impression, one of the things that really bothered me on this new movie, The Believer, was how they wrote Chris McNeil, and that she had written a book that just pretty much would have thrown Reagan under the bus.
Right.
And it's also something that Mark Kermode brought up, that she wouldn't have written this book.
Right.
You know, the character wouldn't have written this book. She wouldn't have endangered her own daughter in this case. And then there was the line about the reason why she couldn't get into the room while the exorcism was going on was because she wasn't a member of their patriarchy.
Was that the line? I didn't recall that. That was the line.
Yeah, that was the line. A lot of people remember that line, especially because it's almost like her character is taking a whole different direction in a way. And it had me curious what your father probably would have thought of that, them taking a character like this and then just kind of rerouting her. And I'm actually surprised Ellen Burstyn didn't say anything about it. But then, you know, she got a ton out of this. She's got her funding for her scholarship. So maybe she's like, okay, I'm just going to go with it.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, she's such a great actress, you know, and I met her on the set. I was so impressed with her as just a person. I didn't spend a lot of time around her, but I mean, I could tell you a story. I won't right now, but I saw her in, well, just without going into the details, there were some underlings under the casting director who were casting the crowd scene, you know, that I'm in at the beginning.
I remember this story.
And who were taking, it wasn't the casting director who was a famous casting director, but one or two people under him were taking advantage of some of the young girls who were trying out, the college co-eds.
Right.
And the first time that I met Ellen Burstyn, she came to my dad's room crying because she had heard the story that these girls were being taken advantage of. And she was literally in tears, almost hysterical. My dad was the producer, so she came to him and said, you have to talk to these girls. You have to find out if this is true. And if so, you have to fire this guy or these guys immediately. And which is what happened. My dad looked into it and they had indeed taken advantage and they were fired. But I mean, that was my first impression of Ellen Burstyn. So, you know, and I've met her a couple of times just briefly subsequent to that, and just an impressive person. You know, I've read part of her autobiography. I bought it mostly to read what she had to say about The Exorcist. Just to, I can't imagine anybody saying anything negative about her. So when I heard she was going to be in the film, I'm like, oh no, please, because I thought, how can you do this, you know? And then I heard that she had read the scripts and didn't, because she herself said, didn't think that much of them and turned it away. And then they made some changes and she read the script and she said, no, I'm sorry. And then they just, as you know, offered her.
Yeah, they kept hyping
money you can't
the
refuse.
offer up and up and up.
Right.
Yep.
And the way I feel about that, of course, who can criticize any actor for deciding to be in a film? Look at Richard Burton, all the films he was in, the turkeys, because, you know, he wanted the money, needed the money. In her case, you know, as you know, the story, they offered her, I don't think it was the money they offered her so much as her charity. Here's her acting charity.
Mm-hmm.
And when they offered it, and I don't know the figure, but I'll bet it was half of the budget that they, you know,
probably, I wouldn't doubt it.
And so, you know, but that shows how desperate they were. Not that you're desperate because you want Ellen Burstyn to be in your movie, but at that point they said to my mind, they're thinking the only thing that's going to save this movie is if we can get Ellen Burstyn in this, you know. And so
she's only in it for like 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, and actually she was in it more than I thought. But anyway, so I don't blame her at all. I think she did the right thing. I think, and so to me, her performance, number one, she's like 90 years old. She looks beautiful. Mm-hmm. She does her part really well. You know, she's convincing, but the writing is terrible.
Right.
You know, they tried to tap into like her real personality. Like, I'm just basing this on the book I read, her book, autobiography, the fact that she was really into spirituality and investigating various religions. I mean, when I heard those lines in the film, they're talking about her, at least as I understand her from my autobiography, very open and very interested in various religions and very spiritual person. So that all rang true to who she really is. And, but I don't know. It was just,
is her character like that? That's the thing I would have asked. I mean, you go through a traumatic experience like that. I don't think I'm going to be fascinated by it.
Yeah, no.
And
the point that you make, and that apparently Mark Kermode saw also, is that it's ridiculous that she would have written a book and exposed her daughter to, you know, people, you know, asking her, oh, were you really possessed and what did it feel like, and so on. So that whole, but I understand, because I haven't seen the whole series, that you may have told me that in the TV series.
It was in the show as well.
Which is, and I was like, equally ridiculous.
Blew me away. Except the only thing they did was change the title of the book. The book in the show was called "The Devil in My Daughter," and then, you know, you got
"Devil in My Daughter." That's
that's what they called it.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So
definitely,
you know, obviously they needed one of the principals from the original movie, and so they wrote this part around her, and they had to come up with a reason how this person could have contacted her, and that's the best idea they could come up with. So, I mean, yeah, it's dumb, and her part is really dumb. I mean, she does her lines well, but the whole part is just a tack on. And then, of course, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about what happens to her. Are we allowed to talk about that?
At this point, I wouldn't worry about it. How about that?
Well, I mean,
I think a lot of people have seen it, and maybe a lot of people don't want to see it.
Well, the thing is this, you know, a venerable, great actress like that, I just hope she makes other films despite her age, because I would hate to think that that's her last performance, is basically having her eyes gouged out. You know,
I think that takes her out of the rest of the film. I think her story's done.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah. Then from then on, we see her now and then in a hospital bed, you know, with her eyes bandaged up. But the whole idea of that was just like ugly. It was just, I guess they wanted to do something along the lines of the infamous, you know,
crucifix
violation. Scene. Yeah. And so they think, well, what can she do with the crucifix that's a little bit different? Well, she can gouge out somebody's eyes, you know.
And I don't think we really even saw that actually making any kind of penetration. And that brings up the question: do you think this movie deserves an R?
Well, I'm trying to think.
I kind of get the impression it's just borderline PG-13.
You know, visually, it's not nearly as shocking or even offensive as the original.
Right.
You know, it's not. I mean, at least look. The one thing I will say to their credit is they could have gone far overboard the way the Pope's Exorcist does at the end. You know, just with visuals and, you know, gross outs and just
throwing people around.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. So I think they did show some restraint, you know. Well, I don't know. Ellen Burstyn is thrown away in this film. I feel like there could have been an effective way of using her and make her a believable character, and she's not. She's just like, oh, there she is from The Exorcist. Oh yeah, there she is. You know?
Yeah, it's funny because I thought about it and it's like, you know, I could have written better than this, and I would have had Ellen Burstyn's character, Chris McNeil, catch wind of what was going on and have her reach out instead of the other way around.
You know, as you know, the old cliche, everything begins with a script, with a screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true of The Exorcist. It was true of The Heretic, which is why, to my mind, The Heretic essentially was so bad because of the screenplay. And I would say that's one of the reasons this film is so bad, because of the screenplay. I just don't get it myself. When you have millions of dollars, I can't believe there aren't better screenwriters out there that they can get. I don't even know who these people are. But, you know, as there must be a lot of people who see these movies and go, I think I'm going to write a screenplay because I can write a better screenplay than that.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think it's true. I don't know. Look, it's just a commercial vehicle to make a quick buck, and and that's all right. They don't pretend it's any more than that, you know. It's what I expected it would be, you know. Not a good film, cheaply made, vulgar, you know, uninteresting. But but the sad thing for them is they're not even meeting their goal, which was to make a quick buck. They're not even making the quick buck.
So hopefully they do better on the next one.
Well,
let's hope so.
If I understand that this director is starting to distance himself from the project.
Oh yeah, I heard that a long time ago too.
And I would
may not come back.
I would be surprised if he did come back. He'd say, "Why? You know what? To
Yeah.
take more abuse? You know?" And like, I've got enough money. I don't know, because presumably they already have the second and third screenplay. They've already paid people. Maybe they've already started filming. I don't know. So it's already in the works. If I were them, I would do what my dad told Warner Brothers when they got ready to make The Heretic, which is just like, start over again, or give it to me and I will dub it, you know, in a foreign language and turn it into a comedy, and you'll have a great comedy on your hand. I mean, because really, where do they go from here? Are they going to build on this story? I don't think so. Are they going to go back in time? Sorry.
Would you say this Believer is kind of a generic film? I hear that a lot from.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen all of the possession films, but to me, from what little I've seen, it's a generic possession film.
Right. What would you say if you gave it a score from 1 to 10? What would you give it?
Well, I would give it, you know, I would give it maybe about a 3 or 4, which I think curiously is where it comes out on the Rotten, you know, Tomatoes reviews, like about 22%. So I'm giving it a little bit higher. I think I'm giving it higher mostly because I really thought the first half hour was really good, engaging, kind of drew me into the story. I was interested in the characters, you know, the husband, the wife, the dilemma, the incredible dilemma, you know, of, you know, which is going to live. And then for them to carry it forward 10 years, and he's got a daughter and he's like a single dad. That whole setup it definitely pulled me into the film and made me interested. At that point, it was better than I had expected.
Right.
And then, like I say, it kind of steadily went downhill. Once they brought in all the crazy religious types, and the body and the blood, and the body and the blood, and all that stuff.
For me, it seemed like a lot of the sensibilities were gone in that. I wouldn't have allowed my daughter to be free in a bed, wrecking a house,
right?
And then the rest of us are huddled in another room. But
yeah, the other thing that I thought the makeup was actually better than I expected it to be, because the makeup in the Pope's Exorcist was really embarrassingly bad. So I thought it was better, but obviously they were trying to suggest Reagan, so they're trying to replicate more or less Reagan's makeup. But I mean, the whole movie is about trying to remind you of the original film. I mean, like I say, the dogs, she grabs a cookie and runs, and her mother grabs her, all the scenes in the hospital, then she becomes possessed, and then the priest is brought in. I mean, it's all just a weak recreation of the original film. And, to me, it's funny you mentioned the line. The one line that I thought was really powerful is when the little girl says, "Mama, I don't want to go to hell." I thought that was good. Maybe you thought it was cheesy, but I thought that was a powerful moment. That's the only time that I really cared about these girls, because I didn't take any of it seriously.
Right.
In The Exorcist, I think you really empathize with Reagan. It feels real. In this, it just feels fake. So I didn't really have any concern for these girls. What happens? It was just a show.
Yeah, I agree on that. There were some odd scenes. I mean, it's like, okay, we see the scene where Victor Fielding, the Leslie Odom Jr. character, is boxing. He's hitting the bag.
Right. Which is again a
rip
off
go
of
anywhere.
Father Karras. But you see, this
didn't go anywhere.
But this is why they used it. It was just to replicate the scene with Father Karras punching the punching bag after his mother dies.
And then the stealing the bacon, like stealing the cookie from the original.
Exactly.
And the chase.
Yeah, and there were other things in there, probably little bits and pieces that I didn't even notice. This Green, I mean, he sort of, I don't watch horror movies, so I didn't see any Halloween films. I just saw, when they started talking about who was going to direct, I thought, well, who's this guy? Because I had never heard of him. And then I kind of heard, the Halloween movies were kind of a bust.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I heard, I didn't know anything about Blumhouse. I don't go to horror films. And I said, okay, what is Blumhouse? Well, then it turned out they were famous for making decent, low budget horror films. And so then the picture starts becoming clear. It's like, okay, we spent $400 million, so we're going to make these movies as cheaply as we can, but we're going to get people with a pedigree of horror films, and we're going to get this low budget, well-known now, horror movie grinder, and put it together. It's just, again, it's crazy to even criticize it, because it's just a money deal. It's the Exorcist franchise continued. And again, there's nothing sacred about the original film. It's okay to make a movie about possession for the buck. But, damn it, if you're going to spend that much money, make a good movie. If you're going to spend all that money, get good writers and get good directors, and actually spend the money, in the making of the film itself. Don't overpay for the franchise, which is what Universal did. It's not Star Wars. I think they thought they were buying the Star Wars franchise, So they're like, oh, well, we missed Star Wars. I don't know if they were in the bidding. We missed Star Wars. We better jump on The Exorcist. 400 million. Well, yeah, okay. All we have to do is make 200 million for the, I think that, I don't know the business end of it, but I think whoever decided, or whatever group decided to spend 400 million, they're not looking really good right now.
Right.
This my guess from what I've seen is that this is going to break even if they're lucky.
You know, after watching the film, and okay, let's take it back to The Exorcist just for a moment, comparing, say, like the Haiti versus the Iraq scene.
Yeah.
Do you kind of get that impression that they were trying to make a nod to the okay, this is in a different country and whatnot? They might as well put, instead of Haiti, not Iraq at the bottom.
Well, you know, I've heard that theory, and it probably does make sense because it's clear to me that they're trying to replicate scenes throughout the film from The Exorcist, because they seem to feel the need to constantly remind people that this is based on The Exorcist. You know, I think they're trying to tap into the good feelings people had about the original film, but you know, I don't think it works that way. But this is what I thought. I thought it was an attempt by them to bring voodoo into the whole thing.
That's what I thought too.
This is the way I looked at it is, okay, they say we're going to do a blessing on your child. And they're doing what I presume is voodoo over her. Maybe it's not. I don't mean to offend some religion, but to me, they're doing voodoo, which is supposed to be a blessing. And it seems, unless I'm misreading the whole plot line, it seems as if that so-called blessing brings on the earthquake. I mean, that's the way I read it, like it was really a curse. Because what happens is there's the earthquake, and then down the road, she becomes possessed. Well, I presume the possession is not just some freak chance, that it was because of the blessing that she got in Haiti, and that a voodoo curse somehow was put on her. You know, like this
it's hard
seed
to,
of a demon was like planted in her that comes to life years later. That's the way I read it. So I think they did. I thought they did it. Started it there to bring in voodoo, but it was so, again, it's so muddled. They're mixing in Catholic theology and voodoo and fundamentalist Baptist believability. One of the main problems.
Questions: would that even work? If you were to bring everybody together into an exorcism like that, would it be effective? As effective if it was in just like one religion?
Well, here's the thing that makes me laugh too. It makes me laugh too. Now, again, I don't want to get too personal, but I believe this James Robinson, Morgan Creek, who's still alive, you know, the dad, is a Catholic. And I hear that his son is a Catholic too, maybe even a devout Catholic. Okay, so the Catholic. You notice in the Believer, at the end, everything's going all to hell until they bring in the Catholic priest finally.
Right.
And then, but I don't even remember. Does he succeed in his exorcism? Doesn't he die?
He dies. His head's turned completely around, facing backwards. Like
so, what I'm saying is this film was a Universal. I don't know how it works. Universal released it, but it was basically a production by a couple of Catholics. You know, but there's definitely, I don't see any Catholic theme expressed, or any sort of devotion to Catholicism or approval of the Catholic Church in that movie, which you do see in The Exorcist.
Right.
I mean, in fact, Pauline Kael, the famous critic, came and said, you know, it's like an advertising poster for the Catholic Church. She called The Exorcist an advertising poster for the Catholic Church. Well, because, you know, it made it look like there is possession. The Pope is right about that. Catholic priests have the power to cast out the demon. There is a God. There is life after death. You know, it has all those themes. So it's a very positive Catholic message. The Exorcist is. This to me, if anything, was contemptuous, to my mind, of religion. You know, or just paid it lip service. I'm not a religious person, so I'm not personally offended. I just don't see any religious sentiment expressed in that. And I'll get back to the first thing I said, which is the essential problem with all these Exorcist movies. My dad's book and film, Exorcist, again, I'm repeating myself, are about faith in God. My dad was trying to, I think it's a futile attempt. He was trying to comfort people and convince people that there is a God, there is life after death. Everything works out well in the end. That was always my dad's theme from, you know, The Exorcist on.
That's funny you say that, because it makes me think of just what you said was that scene from Exorcist III where was it the Father Dyer character telling Kinderman that same thing? Everything works out in the end.
Right. And that
That's
was my
funny.
dad's mantra from The Exorcist on, because, you know, as I say, he had suffered lack of faith, the death of his mother, other things, and had come to believe, well, had come to believe that, he said it many times, what drew him to the story of possession and the original boy who was supposedly possessed, which I don't think he was, but my dad felt that if you could prove or seem to prove that there was such a thing as possession and devils, then it therefore logically had to follow that there were angels as well. They were the opposite. And if there are angels, as he said, I'm saying exactly what he said. If there are angels, then there must be a God. And if there is a God, there is an afterlife. That was his logical argument, which I think is full of holes, but that was his argument. So that was what drew him to the whole story of possession, was as a proof of the afterlife. So all I'm saying is that if anyone wants to do an authentic Exorcist movie, they have to start from that point of view, and that has to be the essence of their theme. But there's no point in somebody else doing it. It's just like trying to replicate somebody else's point of view and somebody else's work. So that's why, you know, I call this, as you know, the curse of the Exorcist. The real curse of the Exorcist is there will never be a good prequel or sequel to The Exorcist.
Well, to me, it's kind of like trying to make a sequel to Taxi Driver.
Right. I mean, it's a thankless task. I mean, not that The Exorcist is like one of the greatest films ever made. You know, I'm not like Mark Kermode. I don't think that. I think it's a really excellent, fine film. And for a horror film, it's maybe the best horror film ever made. The Shining, to me, the two are, you know, The Shining, I also think is incredible. And it's ironic to me that Kubrick almost directed The Exorcist. You know, that would have been very interesting to see. But I don't think he could
have
have done
been a different film.
Different, but I don't think, maybe even more memorable, but I don't think it would have been a better film than The Exorcist with William Friedkin directing, because Kubrick would have taken it over, and my dad would have been in the corner his whole, you know.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
he wouldn't have wanted that.
So, I mean, you know, I think this is what bothers me more than anything, and it shouldn't bother me because it wouldn't have bothered my dad. I hate to see people, film goers, spend their money, you know, if they're seeing a regular show, $13, $14. To me, that's still a lot to see a movie. You know, I go to the cinema for $5, right? So I hate to see them lured into an Exorcist movie, which is promoted as a sequel to a really good movie that they've seen and know is really good. I feel like they're being suckered in, and I hate to see them being taken advantage of. I don't say that the filmmakers intend to take advantage of people, and nobody has to go see a movie. So it shouldn't bother me, but it does. When I see the name Exorcist, I'm not afraid they're going to think my dad wrote it, you know, but I just know that The Exorcist was a really fine film, and now they're just using the name to make a quick buck off of people. And I just think their money be better spent on this Taylor Swift movie next weekend. You know, we know
probably
all
that's probably where the audience is going. That's probably
so,
where they're going.
So anyway, that's, you know, I mean, I probably said a lot more than you wanted me to say, but I guess it just came out.
This is great. I really appreciate that you're doing this.
Oh, sure. No. Well,
I did pull out something back on the whole believer thing, though. You know, and I'm going to do a quick comparison of that first the first portion of the film. You know, here we are in Iraq in the original film.
Yeah.
We pretty much get a gist of what demon we're dealing with, right? Now, you would think that here we are in Haiti, and maybe there was a curse, right? That you get something more related to a Haitian demon.
Right.
Or whatever they would call it. You know, I was getting that impression as well. You know, they go out into the woods, and when I think of the woods, I think of one of the in that can I say religion or philosophy, Bakalu Baka.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's a really evil entity. But turns out the demon that do you know who the demon is in this one? Everybody thinks it's
No,
Pazuzu, and
no, I don't.
there's no
I don't
clue.
know.
There's no
Yeah.
real
Do we
clue.
see the demon? I don't remember. Do we see the demon's face the way you do in The Exorcist?
Supposedly, and one of it is one I heard it looks more like Marilyn Manson or something, or but the flashes in some of these are so quick that it's hard to really focus on it. You go into the credits, and there's one person credited as Lamash 2.
Oh,
so that's how
I
they
see.
connected. But how in
I
the
see.
world are you supposed to know this? I'm gonna have to at some point. I'm probably gonna get a physical copy, either rent it or just to kind of review it when it comes out, which probably will be soon. I mean, if it doesn't do very well in the theater, it's probably going to jump into like digital and all that whatnot. But I would never have guessed that it was Lamash 2. You know, you're in Haiti dealing with a Syrian Macedonian demon that's related to Pazuzu in a way, you know, kind of like an adversary. And then it had me curious, are they going to try to call on Pazuzu to help protect them from Lamash 2? You know, how the stories, they always talk about them kind of butting heads.
I see.
You know.
Well, you know, I had never even heard of Pazuzu, frankly, until The Exorcist, you know.
Right.
And I mean, I didn't even know until recently it was like the demon of the West Winds is supposed to protect pregnant women. It's evil against evil. There are the hints right in the dialogue, evil against evil. You know, the guy says when he sees the little, the figure of the head of Pazuzu. But I mean, so Pazuzu, correct me if I'm wrong, Pazuzu is actually, well, he's a demon, but he protects people, protects pregnant women against other demons, right? So is it really an evil figure? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I haven't really.
From what I understand, it can do evil, but when it comes to like Lamash 2, it'll actually protect people from you know. Then you got that little pendant and whatnot, and that's where we go. And that always confused me when I was, you know, first had seen The Exorcist. What do they mean by the evil against evil, and why? If that's the case, wouldn't it make it more of a good thing and not attacking anyone, you know, in or possessing anyone?
But the one thing I didn't understand right away, I mean, when the movie first came out, you know, the scene where Marin, because I think, you know, because I just saw it, where Marin is digging and they say, we found something, right? And he pulls out the St. Christopher medal and someone says, this is from a different period. Okay. So, I mean, I didn't understand the point of that until much later. Is the period of time that they are digging in, that they're finding artifacts from, is from like centuries before St. Christopher, right? So it doesn't belong there. But I never understood that at the time, because I think a lot of audiences don't know what period we're talking about anyway when they talk about, you know, the ruins in Iraq. You know, like what period, they don't know, you know, how many thousands of years was that? I don't even know. So I don't believe that finding of the St. Christopher is in my dad's screenplay, at least was not originally.
No,
I think it was Friedkin who wanted to make that a recurring symbol throughout the film.
I'm going to jump back onto, because I don't want to hold you up. I think you got something at 4, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I will not have. I won't have much enthusiasm to talk about the subject now, having talked to you for like 2 hours.
No, that's fine. So let's see. What was I going to say? So you pretty much give this a 4 out of 10. I could probably give it maybe. I want to give it just in maybe
you give it just 5. A 1, really?
No, not a 1. I'd give it more like maybe a 5, barely a 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
just to be nice.
Yeah,
you know, it's the first out of 3. They might have got off on a bad foot. I'd like to hope that they kind of correct course on the second one. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. I kind of got the impression, really, from the scene where Leslie Odom Jr. is dumping that water into the sewer off from the house. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
I keep getting the impression they're going to use that somehow for the second one. I don't know.
What I have to
is
presume,
that a significant thing?
Well, what I have to presume is that Linda Blair is going to have a starring role in the film.
Wow.
I just have to guess. Why else do you have that hook at the end? I mean, it was almost like, what's his name, Luke Skywalker at the at the end of that.
Right.
That's what it. But you know what? That to me, I can't believe any audience is like stirred or uplifted or like, oh my God, that's Linda Blair. I mean, that's why they had to give her the big credit. Linda Blair is Reagan. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't think this is a good enough hook. I just don't see it. A 5.
I get the impression that they're going to close it with that. There's like forgiveness or something, and that's it.
Well, I just think that I would just presume that they're gonna like I say that Linda Blair Reagan is gonna have a larger part in the rest of the film, and that Chris McNeil is probably gonna be gone,
right,
from it, and then where they go from there, I mean, God knows,
no clue.
They're all just pointless, but they'll keep grinding them out just the way they made Baraki films. As long as people keep going, it doesn't look like that many people are going to be going. Of course, the next two are just streamed, is my understanding. They're not going to be theatrical releases.
Yeah, I heard both ways, but then with
probably if this had done really well,
it's probably good. Yeah, if it did well, they'd probably put the second one out in the theater. But you might be right. They might just go ahead and just stream the second one and the third one.
Yeah. Now the truth, what I can tell you is, now I'm not a screenwriter. Okay, so. I have no portfolio, but I have, I think, a couple of really good ideas for sequels, but I'm not in the business of trying to market or trying to write a screenplay or try to sell a screenplay. But had they ever contacted me, I could have given them a couple of really good ideas, which I'm not going to share.
Okay.
But I could have given them a couple of really good ideas, which just tells me that there are good ways that one could write a sequel or prequel that they're just not exploring,
Right.
And I won't go beyond that, because if they ever contact me, which I can't imagine they ever would for any reason, but if they ever did, what I would say to them is, I could give you a couple of ideas, but you're going to have to pay me up front just to hear them. in the way that Warner Brothers offered to have my dad and Friedkin come and just pitch an idea, and they paid them like $500,000 just to pitch an idea.
Well, it was good talking with you, Mike. Hopefully we can do this again.
Sure.
Probably won't be about Believer. I was kind of hoping maybe if a Q&A, if we could do a Q&A that you'd be comfortable with, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah. I've talked about Believer more than I would have cared to, but that was my doing. Anyway, yeah, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Really appreciated your opinions and your views on this, and we will talk to you again sometime.
All right, great. You take care.
Thanks for being on my program.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.